The only analogy between the boxing is nothing you're going to do in a QLA is going to be as hard as the boxing. Some of you showed that the fact that you have little or no boxing expertise, that's fine. Some of you that were tall and long arms would benefit from being tall and long arms. Some of you that have a lot of girth, you can use your girth to push people around in the ring, which I can relate to. But the equalizer for the QLA system is a dream team. They do all the heavy lifting. They're the ones pushing them up in the corner and pounding them, not you. You introduce them, but you're not the one doing the pounding. And you've seen now different styles, Raymond, Peter, etc., the pig fucker, TK. Some are more in the trenches and some are less in the trenches. Some like being in the trenches, i.e. slugging it out because they're control freaks and they want to cross the T's and dot the I's. But that's not what the system is meant for, and that's certainly not how I use the system. And I don't know anybody that has done more deals than I have. There's several of my mentees, thankfully, created more wealth. But you've seen that some of you, maybe the first time you were engaged in boxing, it doesn't kill you. And the idea when I initiated the boxing was for a different reason, because you guys get in fights later on the weekend. Since we started the boxing, we haven't had any fights. It is exemplary of that it worked for that. But on a second level, and the second level, the one we talk about now, is the fact that everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. And I think Mike Tyson said those, or at least he's given credit for saying that. I don't know if he did or not. Of course, getting punched in the face by Mike Tyson is significantly different than getting punched in the face by somebody else. I was telling Amber that she got punched in the face a couple times. The rest of you guys cringed. It's like you didn't want to jump in the ring to help her, but I could see you physically tense up, because most of us are not used to seeing a woman get punched in the face. And a couple of the times she got clocked pretty good. Maybe it's your sister or your mother, or that the first time she shrugged it off, she was okay. And it evokes different emotions, assuming you pick healthcare, and I always assume you pick healthcare. If you're an idiot, you don't pick healthcare, unless you're already in the business. But healthcare is the slam dunk motherfucking easy. It's the easiest from A to B and B to Z, or Z. It just is, no matter where you are. But once you pick that and you start searching for a chairman, which we're going to go from the chairman all the way through the Motivate Accelerator starting tomorrow, you'll get in a pattern. And you're judged by me by what fact pattern you develop. Nobody's going to be like the 4 or 5 or 6 people you've seen so far. You'll take something, unfortunately, that's within your comfort zone from each one. And that's the mistake. You should take something, and the most successful kids have taken something from various people that we've shown them that made them uncomfortable, not comfortable. For example, when I start to explain how, when you're interviewing accountants, you should make the initial contact. You. And again, now that we're through the Corona period, I highly recommend you go see them in person. After the first meeting, when you have the second, and if there's a third meeting, you take your CFO and your accountant that's not a CFO that's on the board. Well, if you haven't filled out your board properly, you haven't got nobody to take. And if you don't follow the scripts, and the CFO and the accountant, in addition to you, have scripts. I've seen big Four accounting former partners kill the deals with accounting firms because they say the wrong thing. You're going to give your CFO that goes with you 5 bullet points. No matter what question the Big Four accountants ask, we only got 5 fucking answers, like a politician. 5, that's it. And you've got about 7 or 8. They've only got 4 or 5. And the accountant and the CFO, which is an accountant, between the three of you, you will split up the dialogue. Who's going to answer what question? That's how the fact pattern should work. And I told you, if you walk into an office for an appointment with a big accounting firm, and your office is only as big as this platform, and there's an assistant manager there, they don't like you, they don't like the deal, and or they're too busy. I won't sit in a meeting like that, but you should still sit in a meeting like that because you need the practice. When you go into a room that's as big as this part of the pavilion, and they've got sandwiches and shusy set out over here and an open bar over here, and there's 5 or 6 partners, and the managing partner of the office pops in to introduce himself. They love you, the deal, the board, and they're hungry. And it's just a matter of formality. You go through and answer a few perfunctory questions, and it's a done deal. I'm more likely to get the big enchilada, the bar and the food, etc. And that's why I want you to practice with a small firm. But you're going to develop fact patterns. After the first 4 or 5 presentations you make, they'll all be the same. There's not going to be any variance. It's not for you to invent new words, like Margot, the French bitch, who said, I finally just following the scripts, and I don't understand, but they work. And you're going to repeat yourself, and it's going to be boring, but it works. And when you guys were boxing in there, 2 or 3 guys that had, I'm proud of all of you, but the 2 or 3 guys that had some skills who were pretty obvious. No matter what the other guy did that he was boxing, they did the same thing. Whereas most of us, or most of you, were scrambling on the ground and getting knocked off the ring and falling down, etc. That's not how we're going to act in the meetings, because you're going to find out what skill sets you have. not pugilistic ones, but I mean skill sets. And that's why I tell you to go to these various organizations and join clubs that you can't afford, would normally allow you in. You get on the finance committee and the membership committee. You go to Toastmasters and you learn presentation skills. And you're going to keep those presentations. And you do all that before you interview anybody. Now, it's hard to tell Peter because English is his third language. And the pig fucker can't speak English, so sometimes it's difficult. But Raymond certainly speaks English. And he had pretty good presentation skills when he started. And then when he went to these other things like Toastmasters, etc., he got even better. You're going to join something like Rotary or Kiwanis that they have around the world. Bill Gates still is very active in the Saddle Kiwanis up in Washington. And you're going to develop a style, a persona, and that will help you build your mantra, and you're going to stick with it. I've been like this, like I told you, since forever. I say the same thing. My kids, unfortunately for them, have heard some of my stories. They say thousands of times. I don't know about thousands of times, but certainly many, many times. And the more you give the presentations, by the time you do your first deal, you will have done between 100 and 150 presentations, maybe 200 if you've got no skill sets. A few of you have very little communication skills and skill sets, so you have to build upon it. Some of you that are up on that wall went to voice coaches. Nobody in this room has a little squeaky voice, but we've had people with little squeaky, voices, and the guy's as big as a Cuban, but he's got a squeaky voice. He sounds 9 years old, and so he went to voice coach. Klaus Kleinfeld went to a voice coach, amongst others, because to learn how to speak and put forward, a more mature sound. I've given thousands of speeches, thousands. And you've heard me say on YouTube, I've cleaned out rooms where they threw plates at me and fucking salt shakers and all kinds of shit, and everybody just gets up and leaves because my speaking skills were pretty, not ordinary, they were less than ordinary. I used to have a real squeaky voice when I was in my 20s and early 30s. Thank God that went away. But when you're asking people for tens and hundreds of millions of dollars and you sound like this, that dog doesn't hunt. And so I developed, some people say, as I started to lose my voice yesterday afternoon, from all the screaming I do, my vocal cords have been damaged, and so now I don't have a squeaky voice. I don't know if there's any truth in it, but it's a good story, so I use it once in a while. But you will develop your own style. And you will also see it's better to have them on their back foot when you walk in wearing a suit in Fort Lauderdale, Miami, in Little Cuba, instead of wearing a white shirt with a cigar in your hand and having them apologize the first 10 or 15 minutes why they're dressed that way. You put them on their back foot. And the system is set up to put them on their back foot not once, not twice, but 4 or 5 or 6 times when you follow the program. All we need is a little edge. And the information that you put forth and how you put forth the information and the fact that you've practiced from the lowest level of accounting firm and the lowest level of law firm, that all takes time. You don't want to do that. And just as Peter said, you jump to the 4th step, which is building a dream team, and you haven't clarified your vision, you haven't built your own personal foundation, and what I call simplistically getting your head screwed on straight. 2 or 3 of you have your head kind of screwed on straight, but it's not exactly straight. Okay, so you got to do some work on it. It's not a matter of just sounding confident. It's not just a matter of saying things clearly, succinctly, and crisply. I mean, they have to make sense. And more importantly, you have to assume the sale. TK, the electrician that he is, he assumes the sale. And you can tell. He talks like, I get more yeses than I get no's. When he first came through, I said, you have to assume the sale. And most people don't assume the sale. It's like you've asked me, and a couple others asked me, when do you introduce delayed fees? For those of you that come to the seminar once, I told you then, almost the first words off your fucking lips. Yet very rarely do they do that. Because you think, I don't know what you think. When some of you explain starting tomorrow how you haven't been able to make the system work yet, the operative word is yet, I mean, you're embarrassed, you're afraid, whatever the word is, and you don't, and as I told you when I talked to you, you obviously do work KKR, yeah, and then you obviously understand delayed fees. I assume. Now, sometimes the partners, years and years ago, because when I was doing it, KKR was just new. Now, 40 years later, there's nothing new about that. Now you'd say Blackstone. You obviously do business with Blackstone. But sometimes the young partners don't know who Blackstone is. So then, Blackstone, the 3rd largest private equity firm, 2nd largest hedge fund. Sometimes you gotta remind them. It's like that wildebeest that was helping the other wildebeest off the ground, when he was poking them in the ass. So, but you'll learn these. Now, your board, guys and gals, will not be used to be given a script. And that will be not the first, but it could be the very first thing that you come crossways with your board. I've been public accountant for 37 years, and I know what to say. I say, well, if that's your attitude. Now, they don't tell me that, but they'll tell you that. If that's your attitude, well, then we made a wrong choice in you, and your resignation was gladly accepted. And depending on how much I get pissed off, don't let the door hit you in the flabby ass on the way out. Now, we've had a few people talk that way. We had a couple of kids get thrown in jail by Carl Icahn. Carl Icahn accused them of stalking him. I don't know details, but guys like Carl Icahn can get you thrown in jail. Carl Icahn, the big hedge fund guy. And we've had people, I'm not leaving until I get a check for $50,000. We've had a couple people get thrown in jail for that. And I've gotten away with that. But you're not me. You're not here to copy or mimic me. Now, wearing 3-piece suits, fine. Back in the 90s, if I was selling pocket watches. I could have been a millionaire just off the pocket watches all my mentees got. But I used to give Rolex watches away when you did your first $1 million. Not to you, but to your significant other. And then your significant other says, get the fuck out there and sell some more. Now in those days, the Rolex watch only cost 10 grand. I don't know what a Rolex watch costs now. But you'll find your own style. And when you find your own style, it becomes, as sad, my Yorkshire wife would say, I keep on saying, I've never stolen candy from a baby and I've never shot fish in a barrel. I have knocked a few people down and taken their wallet. I would be disingenuous, so I didn't say that. But it becomes easy peasy. And then you won't want to sleep because every hour, security used to drag me out of the building because I didn't want to go home. And 24-hour trading was just beginning. You can trade 24 hours in some currency, some kind. I won't say everything's open 24 hours, but almost everything's open 24 hours. And you won't want to go home. You won't want to sleep. And your significant others will think that you have a mistress. Sally knows my mistress is the deal. I'm a deal fucking junkie. Now, I've gotten older. She says since I got in my late 60s and my 70s, I've calmed down a little. But if we're in a deal, there's nothing calm about it. And then when the deal's done, it's like somebody sucked the adrenaline out of me. All the adrenaline, and I kind of like a rag doll. It takes me a day or a day and a half to recuperate. When I was your age doing it, I could recuperate in an hour. I was fired up again. I don't fire up as easily as I once did. But when you're enjoying what you do, and Raymond said he loves what he does. As I told him when he was here, it just takes too long to do it. But as he pointed out, first deal was 800 days. Second deal was 300 days. Third deal was 60 or 90 days, whatever it is. But he's got a team. He's capable of doing easily 1 or 2 deals a week. Easily. You will be given the training. Remember, you only have 2 times to make a first impression. First, when they see you walk in the door. Second, when you open your mouth. I do a terrific job of keeping you from putting your foot in your mouth, but default's a bitch. It's easy to fall back in your old habits. It's easy. A couple of you are boxing, you were a sucker for a left hook. How many guys hit you with a left hook? Because you dropped your guard. And the more you run out of gas, as you will all attest to, it's harder to keep your fucking hands up. But when you're flapping your mouth on the sidelines and you're the one sucking air there, it's hard. But you learn all that. And if we boxed more, or we boxed every day, you would come away with a better habits. Same goes for your presentation skills. In the old days, when we did role playing, he's the banker and you're a starving guy that wants money from the bank. And you'd role play and it wouldn't be right. And so then the class would correct you. You'd forget. So now I do both sides. Tomorrow when I do role playing, I'm going to be the seller. I'm going to be the buyer. I only want you to hear the positive. I'm not going to give you any negative. So God forbid, because even my worst presentation is better than most. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. I asked our SEAL friend if they still say, no, the only easy day was yesterday. And he said yes, which I've been hearing from my SEAL guys since the fucking 60s. There's a point in time you get tired of hearing that. There's a point in time. The fact is the only easy day was yesterday. It's the fucking truth. Whether you're training to go into combat or whether you're training to give presentations. I used to give presentations to my kids. If I could keep their attention when they were 2, 3, 4 years old for 20 minutes, I was doing good. And then when my kids told me to fuck off, basically, I did it to my Great Danes, Driller, who's in that picture with me up there. If I could keep him standing like that for 10, 20 minutes, and then when he'd go down and cross his legs down, and then when he put his head on his paws, I knew I lost him. So we'd start over again. Film yourself when you give a presentation. Film yourself. You'll be, there's a word they use up here, gobsmacked. I'm not sure what that means, but it's kind of like you'll be dumbfounded by how bad you are when you film yourself. First, record the voice so you don't have to look at yourself. And then, when you think you sound pretty good, then record your actual image. Most of your significant others are doing things, taking care of kids, blah, blah, blah. They're not going to have time to fucking listen to you. Or they'll say they don't have time to listen to you, either one. But practice in front of people. And I still practice. For every hour that I give you in this seminar, I spend an hour and a half before you got it. We have 2,800 slides. We're only going to use about maybe 300. But I go through all 2,800 and I still practice. And practice doesn't make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. And I know these numbers, like the back of my hand. For 12 years, we had the lowest interest rates in 5,000 years. Now, a lot of people wish they had taken more advantage of the low interest rates. But that cow's out of the barn. So now we only have the lowest interest rates in 2,000 or 3,000. But as you heard Raymond, it doesn't matter because you build it into the model. As long as free cash flow covers debt service, doesn't matter how high interest rates are. And the more scared people get, high interest rates equates low purchase price. And even though Raymond didn't call it an embarrassing offer, he goes at an extremely low offer. We're going to teach you $10,000 magic carpet, and I'll give you $50 for it. You'll find out how motivated they are, whether they throw you out of the office or get up and walk out of your office. It's like the call girls that go to Davos, the $10,000 a pop to call girls. I'll buy you a couple of drinks. Normally, then they throw their drink in your face and they move down the bar. But all this comes, and the more you do it, the more you'll get good at it. It will sound and look ugly in the beginning. And that's why I don't want you talking to PwC or Ernst & Young or some of the big law firms right out of the blocks. And a couple of you have a relationship with big law firms. You have an indirect relationship to the Goombas. They're first-class professionals. which they complain about paying too much. But I mean, they're getting these deals done that shouldn't be done. Remember, so I'm going to go in a lot more detail starting off. We start at embarrassing offer, seller finance, and we work down. The last resort is commercial finance. And banks aren't the only people that give you commercial finance. You know, savings and loans, pension funds, insurance companies, and we go through all this. Also give commercial loans. There's 665 banks in the UK. There's 8 clearing banks and 20 Main Street, High Street banks. So where are the other 440? They're not on the street corners. They're lending facilities, lending offices. And in America, there's 700 or 800 banks. In Canada, there's 300 or 400 banks. In Germany, there's 120 banks. Netherlands, there's at least 100 banks. But they're not on the street corner, and they're not doing advertisements on the television, but they're there. And your accountants and your lawyers and your financial professionals that are on your boards know them.